Good then. Welcome everyone to this meeting of the Old Colony Metropolitan Planning Organization. I will go ahead and start with the call to order and accessibility statement. Do you usually read this, Charlie?
Yes, I can read it. Sure.
Great. Sounds good.
Sure. This meeting is accessible to people with disabilities. Microphones and telephones will be used by all speakers. If you like this accommodation, please contact Mary Waldron at 508-583-1833. Thank you. The Notice of Non-Discrimination Rights and Protections to Beneficiaries with regard to the Federal Title VI Non-Discrimination Protections and the State Non-Discrimination Protections is included on this meeting's agenda and is available on the Old Colony Planning Council website at https://oldcolonyplanning.org/. Please contact Mary Waldron at 508-583-1833 for more information. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Charlie. Go to the next slide. I think we should do the roll call as well. So if you want to call the roll.
Yes, Derek Cravat.
Yep, Derek Cravat here representing MassDOT Secretary and CEO Monica Tibbetson.
Sean Handy.
Sean Handy, District 5 Assistant Project Development Engineer representing Administrator Gulliver.
Thank you. John Messia.
John Messia representing Mayor Sullivan, City of Brockton.
Do we have Tyler Bouchard on the line? Not yet. Lee Hartman.
Lee Hartman representing the Town of Plymouth, present.
Dan Salvucci.
Present.
Becky Coletta.
Becky Coletta on behalf of OCPC, present.
Okay, thank you. And then for ex officio members, we have Josh Barber from Federal Highway Administration.
Josh Barber here.
And we have also Eric Kemperline from Federal Highway.
Eric Kemperline here. Thank you.
And do we have anybody from FTA? I don't see Kirsty on the line. And then from the Old Colony JTC, we have Vice Chair Dan Salvucci.
Yep, present.
Thank you. Thank you. We have a quorum present.
All right, great. Thanks and welcome everyone. Next item on the agenda is public comments. Is there anyone present that would like to make a comment at this time? All right, seeing none. If you do have a comment at any point during the meeting, you can use the react function on Zoom and raise your hand or type something in the chat and we'll be sure to call on you. The next item is the approval of the December 17th, 2024 meeting minutes. I'll ask for a motion and second to approve those minutes.
So moved, Dan Salvucci, Whitman.
Thank you.
Lee Hartman, second.
All right, thank you both. Motion having been made and seconded. Are there any comments or questions on the minutes? Seeing none, go ahead and call the roll.
Derek Cravat.
Yes.
Sean Handy.
Yes.
John Messia.
Yes.
Lee Hartman.
Yes.
Dan Salvucci.
Yes.
Michael Lambert.
Yes.
And Becky Coletta.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Move on to the next item, which is the Brockton Area Transit Report. Turn it over to Michael.
Thank you very much. We have no new updates at this time. We're just trying to keep the operation running despite the cold and snow.
Great. Thanks, Michael. And it is very cold today, so good luck. We'll move over to GATRA. Any updates there? Not sure I see anyone from GATRA on, so no, we'll move on to the next item. It should be performance measures 1 on the federally required safety performance targets. I believe Chris Clem will be presenting this one.
Yeah, thank you, Derek. Charlie, am I kicking this one off for the state before passing it off to you folks to do a real regional dive in?
Yes, I don't believe we have the regional dive in today, but so we're just going to go with the
worries.
state.
Yeah, no problem. And I apologize to Sean who's sharing screen. I didn't send you my presentation before this, but if I could get permission to share my screen, that would be great.
Yes, 1 second.
Thanks.
Okay, you should be able to share your screen now.
Awesome. Give me one moment. Let me just full screen. Okay, I've lost sight of all of you, but can you see a presentation on the screen?
Not yet.
Not yet. All right.
Just a little circle going round and round. There it is.
Okay. Everybody can see it?
Yep. Yes.
All right. All right. Thank you. Appreciate the patience. So good morning, all. I'm Chris Clem. I'm with MassDOT's Office of Transportation Planning. And I'm here to present our statewide safety performance measure targets for 2025. So for a little bit of background on performance measures generally, in 2016, FHWA passed a rule establishing 3 performance measures that state DOTs and MPOs must track. These are PMs 1, 2, and 3, and the focus of today's presentation is specifically on PM 1, and that involves improving safety. So the required metrics under PM 1 include the number of roadway fatalities and serious injuries, the rate of roadway fatalities and serious injuries per 100 million vehicle miles traveled, or VMT, and the total number of non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries. And it's important to know that this is not a 1-year target, but a 5-year rolling average target. So the statewide target put forth for 2025 is a 2021 to 2025 average target for each measure. And the target setting process this year began with a trendline projection based on the latest data available in July of 2024 now. As noted in years past, higher rates of speeding and decreased vehicle miles traveled in 2020, 2021, and 2022 meant that our safety numbers were largely moving in the wrong direction. But the latest data from 2023 shows that we're starting to see this trend begin to reverse itself. And in addition to target setting, MassDOT also developed a 2023 to 2027 projection to see what the future might look like if targets and trends were to hold out. And you might recall we did this last year as well. So in setting our 2024 target, we also provided a 2026 projection. So this year we're providing a 2027 projection, simply a 2-year look ahead. As noted, these targets were developed in the middle of 2024, so MassDOT had to estimate what the full year of 2024 data might look like. And to do so, MassDOT compared data from 2015 to 2023 to the year-to-date data and found that on average, about 55% of annual fatalities occurred between January 1st and July 30th of each year. So to estimate the full year of 2024 fatalities, MassDOT divided the year-to-date number that we had in July by 55%, and then we assumed a 3% reduction in fatalities from 2024 to 2025. And this brings us to a 2021 to 2025 rolling average and 2025 target of 365. And that's the first blue bar here on the screen. And if this 3% annual decrease continues, our projections show that the 2027 5-year average will further decrease to 315. Moving on to the fatality rate, this represents the 5-year average fatalities divided by the 5-year average vehicle miles traveled. As I might have mentioned, VMT recently started to rebound towards pre-pandemic levels, and MassDOT expects 2024 VMT to be mostly in line with 2019, and 2025 VMT could be slightly higher. Consequently, the 5-year average rate is projected to be 0.58 fatalities per 100 million vehicle miles traveled. And that's this first number here below the green circle. And if this trend continues, the rate will be 0.48 in 2027. So again, just a reminder, the target here is the 21 to 25 measure, the first blue bar. And the second blue bar is for informational purposes to see what this might look like 2 years down the line if trends hold out. Moving on to serious injuries, MassDOT largely followed the previous methodology to estimate serious injuries for 2024 and 2025.
Hello. Hello. Yeah.
Sorry, is there a question? I can't see everybody. Just want to make sure I'm not
No,
missing
you're-
anything.
Yep.
You're
Okay.
good.
Sorry.
Someone has your mic open. Sorry about that.
Okay. No worries. Just didn't want to talk over anybody. So MassDOT also found that roughly 55% of annual serious injuries occur between January 1st and July 30th of each year. So MassDOT divided the 2024 year-to-date number in July by 55% again to derive a 2024 estimate. And then we applied a 3% annual reduction to arrive at a 2025 estimate. This brings the 21 to 25 5-year average and new target to 2,622. And if this trend continues, the 5-year average in 2027 will be 2,258. For the injury rate, we followed the exact same methods to derive the fatality rate. And so we found the 5-year average serious injuries rate to be 4.17 serious injuries per 100 million vehicle miles traveled. And that's, again, this number right here below the first green dot. And if this trend continues, the 5-year rate in 2027 will be 3.48. So a nice decrease there. Moving on to our final metric, which is non-motorized serious injuries and fatalities. These numbers, even more than the others, have fluctuated greatly in recent years, with spikes in 2022 and 2023. However, 2024 year-to-date data in July shows that these numbers may have peaked in 2023, and we're now trending in the right direction. And following previous methodology, MassDOT found that on average, about 54% of annual non-motorist fatalities and serious injuries occur between January 1st and July 30th of each year. So the 2024 year-to-date number was divided by 54%, and then a 5% annual reduction was assumed to estimate the 2025 number. And I'll note that a 5% annual reduction was assumed here based on the state's increased work and emphasis to protect vulnerable road users. And this brings the 2025 5-year target to 497, this first blue bar on the right. And if this decrease continues, the average will decrease to 445 in 2027. So the requested action today, the MPO is required to either endorse MassDOT's state targets or establish their own targets by the end of February 2025. In the past, all MPOs have adopted MassDOT's targets with the goals of contributing towards MassDOT's larger goal of improving safety and decreasing fatalities and serious road injuries in all categories. And I want to remind everyone that, as always, although we do develop numeric targets in line with this exercise and requirement by FHWA, MassDOT's overarching goal is 0 fatalities and 0 serious injuries. And before we vote, I'll just pull the targets here onto the table. So this is the relevant metric, and this is the target you'll be voting on today. And in the rightmost column is just the projection for reference and informational purposes to see where we might be if the target and trends that we're projecting for 2025 hold true to 2027. And that is it. I'm happy to take any questions.
Great. Thank you, Chris. Any questions for Chris on this process? Dan, I think you're muted. Here.
Yes, I was. Thank you. Just, I want to hear Old Colony's view on these estimates, if in fact they agree with them.
Charlie, Bill?
Thank you. Bill?
Yeah, we agree with them. MassDOT puts a lot of work every year into these estimates and performance targets, and it's been a great process last few years, and from our review so far, these are very reasonable.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's certainly been interesting the last few years with the impacts from COVID and the pandemic and travel. But Old Colony and their RPAs are really come hand in hand with us when we're reviewing these numbers in the last few months. So we presented them to staff at the beginning of January to ask questions and kind of make sure we had a conversation before bringing these to you folks. And then next month, as I might have alluded to before this, Bill will provide a look into how the Old Colony region is doing specifically, so you can look at your own communities.
Okay, thank you.
Just a quick comment from Rocky Area Transit here. Last week, Transportation for Massachusetts hosted a discussion with a Harvard researcher who had conducted a study a couple of years ago on the true cost of driving. And one of the elements of that cost is resides within these numbers here, which of course are hard to capture and hard to quantify in terms of the human cost of these injuries, but if they are converted into a financial number, you're talking about tens and 20s of millions that are just not accounted for on an annual basis. In terms of the overall discussion between transit financing and vehicle financing is, the just dramatic higher level of safety associated with transit and the ability to avoid some of these costs and some of these tragic incidents are worth contemplating as we head into yet another transportation financing discussion.
Okay, yeah, that's a great point. And I know that MassDOT does maintain significantly greater, excuse me, safety data beyond just the measures and metrics included here as required by FHWA. I don't believe, and Derek, please correct me if I'm wrong, that we have anything that associates or correlates injuries and safety specifically to a cost, like more of the economic impact. But that's a great point, Michael, and perhaps something that MassDOT should look into more when providing these and similar presentations.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. Any other questions or comments? If not, at this time, as Chris mentioned, we do need a vote on this topic, and it's required, like Chris said, that the MPO adopt these targets like they have in the past, or establish their own, but entertain a motion if someone would like to make it to adopt these calendar year 2025 safety targets as presented. Please
Yeah, I'll
state your
make that
name.
motion, Dan Salvucci, Whitman.
Okay.
I'll second.
All right. Thank you, Dan and John. Go ahead and call a roll, Charlie.
Derek Cravath,
Yes.
Sean Handy,
Yes.
John Messiah,
Yes.
Lee Hartman,
Yes.
Dan Salvucci,
Yes.
Michael Lambert,
Yes.
Becky Coletta,
Yes.
and we want to double check. Val Massard, are you representing Tyler Bouchard today?
Yes.
Okay. Val Massard,
Yes.
thank you. Motion carries.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Next up on our agenda, we have a TIP amendment. That'd be TIP Amendment 2 for the fiscal year 2025 to 2029 TIP. I'll turn it over to Bill.
Thanks, Derek. So in our current 2025 to 2029 TIP, we've received 2 bipartisan infrastructure law by discretionary grants in our region. Then as these involve federal funds, they do need to be amended into the TIP for federal fiscal year 2025. So just want to go to the next page as a summary of what these are. So the first one, so in Abington, the town received a Safe Streets for All supplemental planning and demonstration grant under the Safe Streets for All program. The total value of that grant is about $377,000. And we're looking to program this into FFI 2025. And then the Old Colony Planning Council received a prioritization process pilot program grant, and that's in the total value of $1.99 million. And so these do, as I mentioned, these do need to be amended into the TIP. So at this time, I'd ask this board to consider releasing this draft amendment to a 21-day public review and comment period, which would be scheduled to conclude at the end of the business day on February 14th, 2025. So typically we run it until the Friday before the next MPO meeting.
Thank you, Bill. Is there a motion and second to release this amendment for a comment period as described?
So move.
Yeah, I'll make that. All right, second, Dan Salvucci. Great job.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. And who made the first motion? Was that? Just for the
Becky
minutes?
Coletta.
Becky Coletta. Okay, excellent. Thank you. All right. And are there any comments or questions before we take the roll call vote? All right, as Dan mentioned, congratulations to Old Colony and Abington for these grant awards. Well done, and looking this forward to see how they play out. But with that, you can go ahead and call the roll.
Derek Corbett,
Yes.
Sean Handy,
Yes.
John Messia,
Yes.
Val Massard,
Yes.
Lee Hartman,
Yes.
Dan Salvucci,
Yes.
Mike Lambert,
Yes.
Becky Coletta.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you, everyone. Move on to the next item, which is the Protect program, another discretionary grant program and process we've initiated for MPOs to request projects be included on MassDOT's Resilience Improvement Plan. I believe I am covering this item, unless you had anything, Charlie, you wanted to add beforehand, or anyone?
Nope.
Okay. All right, great. Well, I think there's slides. I don't know if y'all have them. If not, I can open mine, but yeah, okay, perfect. Okay, great. You can go to the next slide. All right, so we wanted to just quickly bring this to the MPO. As folks may be aware, there is a current discretionary grant notice of funding opportunity out for a program called Protect. It's focused on resilience improvements. The deadline for applications is February 24th, 2025. And a number of municipalities, regional planning agencies, and us as a state agency are applying for this program. So we wanted to just present a little bit of background on what's known as MassDOT's Resilience Improvement Plan and resiliency initiatives happening at MassDOT. And also, this presentation is just an introduction to a process we've initiated to allow municipalities and metropolitan planning organizations to request specific projects be added to MassDOT's Resilience Improvement Plan. And that has implications for this Protect funding program. So I'll get to that toward the end, but for now, we just wanted to give a little bit of context on what MassDOT's doing in the area of resiliency and what the Resilience Improvement Plan is, and then set the stage for that Protect program as well. So just for background, this is all a bit of a policy context that Massachusetts has what's known as the Statewide Hazard Mitigation and Climate Adaptation Plan, or SHMCAP, which is a mouthful. So it's been abbreviated to just Resilience Mass, aim of this larger strategy. It's an umbrella initiative for all state agencies led by the Massachusetts Emergency Management Agency, updated every 5 years. And you can see specific transportation items on the right there. So the Resilient Mass Plan calls for MassDOT, MBTA, and other partner agencies to do things like conduct climate vulnerability assessments, look at where there's the highest risk for transportation assets when it comes to flooding or natural hazards, incorporate resiliency into project development, design criteria, standards, et cetera, and things like that. So this is, again, just part of a context of a whole of government solution for addressing resiliency and project planning. Next slide. We also have included resiliency in MassDOT's statewide long-range transportation plan called Beyond Mobility. Just to be consistent with all of that other planning at the state level, we have priority area in Beyond Mobility for resiliency. And just some examples of performance measure we've included is that we're now tracking the number of capital investment plan projects specifically found to be addressing a sort of location that's high risk for flooding or other natural hazards. And we're tracking the amount of federal relief funding Massachusetts has received as a result of natural disasters. So that's a new initiative as well. Next slide. And so Resilient Mass, Beyond Mobility, and this Protect funding program I mentioned are kind of the three large, larger kind of picture items happening. And then all of those were, prompted MassDOT to develop what we're calling our Resilience Improvement Plan, which is a bit of a more specific document for how MassDOT plans to address resiliency efforts. Next slide. And so here's just a little bit of what's in the Resilience Improvement Plan. It's structured by these 5 categories: plan, improve, maintain, respond, and inform. And it just sets the stage and prescribes specific actions and process improvements that MassDOT will be making to address resiliency, right? So in the planning stage, right, we're doing things like those vulnerability assessments first, just understanding which transportation facilities are at the highest risk for things like flooding or sea level rise or storm surge drainage issues, right? So just getting a sense of where there are resiliency concerns. Improve has to do with actually initiating projects that address those locations. But one-time projects or temporary, they might not solve the whole problem, right? So we have to also focus on maintenance, looking at maintaining these assets over their whole life. And then there's a section here on respond as well, right? Given the nature of resiliency, sometimes, we can't plan. There are, we see storms happen all the time, right? Like, every few months, it seems, right, we're getting hit with new storms. Last year, I think in Leominster and Fitchburg, right, you saw whole areas of roadway washed away. There was massive effort to respond to that. So we have a section here on responding to these kinds of major storms that are unpredictable, becoming more predictable, but are still unpredictable in the moment, right? So having a section on that is in the resilience improvement plan. And then finally, this category on inform, which talks about just generally coordinating approaches across all layers of government, making sure we're all in lockstep when it comes to addressing this issue, right? Because it's very much a cross-agency effort. There's multiple programs that Environmental Energy Affairs runs. There's culvert improvements that Department of Energy Resources manages. So there's a lot of different items happening, and so we want to make sure all of that is coordinated and informed across all state agencies. Next slide. It also talks a lot about integrating resiliency into MassDOT's project development process. So when it comes to the scoping process, right, we're now including things like more environmental system condition and safety and resilience, as well as stormwater control measures at the scoping stage, right? So previously, right, when we initiated a project, we might not have looked at what kinds of stormwater control measures a project might need, right? Even if it's not in an area that it might be at risk, right? We're still looking at what are the potential futures like, and could flooding be a problem here early on in the project planning process. And then as it advances in design, we are incorporating standards from the statewide climate resilience design standards tool. There's a climate change indicator subsection now in the bridge design manual. And there's multiple resources that we're drawing on now as part of the project development process. And then when it comes to operations and maintenance, there's now a programmatic operations and maintenance plan for drainage system maintenance, given these more frequent storm surges, and updating standards to incorporate best practices when it comes to pavement, just materials that are being used for pavement, right? Making sure they're sort of resilient and as sort of hard as they can be to prevent flooding. So next slide. So that's all about kind of the process changes that are happening at MassDOT for resiliency. The resilience improvement plan also includes project lists. So I've included the link for this on the side here, and it'd be great to get that added to the chat if folks are interested in taking a look. There's an appendix to this resilience improvement plan, appendix 3, that actually lists projects. And we wanted to note the benefits of having those projects included in the RIP, and those are shown on the slide here. So if a project is included in a state or MPO, a regional resilience improvement plan, projects that are federally funded have a reduced state match. So typically we see 80% federal and 20% state match required. If it's a resiliency project included in this resilience improvement plan, it gets a federal match reduction. So we can, or increase rather, so we can see projects funded at, say, 87% federal, 13% non-federal. And if it's included in the Beyond Mobility or long range plan, which it is, it's even a higher federal participation cost. So it's 90% federal funded and 10% state or non-federal. Another major thing is that no benefit cost analysis is required for Protect discretionary grants. So those grants I mentioned that are due on February 24th for the Protect program, if a project is in the MassDOT Resilience Improvement Plan, the applicant for that project does not have to do a benefit cost analysis. And this can be important because BCAs are quite technical. They can cost municipalities, especially smaller towns, not having technical capacity, right? It can cost, up to $50,000 sometimes just to do a benefit cost analysis. There's quite a lot of inputs, and although we acknowledge that it'd be great to do them when possible, it can be a barrier for applying for this program. So having us listed this way in the regulations and the notice of funding opportunity does sort of eliminate that requirement. So we had multiple requests for this process to ask municipalities and MPOs to submit projects to be added to our resilience improvement plan as a result of that. And that's part of this process here. So you can go to the next slide. And that's just, putting into writing what I just said, that we're now soliciting projects for inclusion in this statewide RIP that I just gave some details on. And ultimately there will be two lists, right? Right now we have a list in our statewide RIP that's just state-owned projects. So projects on MassDOT-owned roadways. This list that we're soliciting now will be a separate list called like a regionally endorsed project list that we've received from our regional partners, including, Oak Colony, and we will, be referencing that, and applicants for Protect funding can reference that before the planning grant is due, or the grant is due. And we've put a deadline. We got the list from you, Charlie, and Old Colony on January 15th, and we're just presenting it here today to just seek the MPO endorsement. So that's all the context. And Charlie, I'll turn it over to you to go over the details of the regional list as well.
Great, thank you, Chair. Thank you for the detailed presentation. Sean, if you could go back to the slide just before this presentation. So as we're going back, that one, next one. Yeah, thank you. So, as Derek mentioned, MassDOT is seeking projects for potential inclusion in the MassDOT Resiliency and Improvement Plan. So our grant management specialist, Paul Umano, had reached out to the communities to see if any of them were going to be applying for Protect grants. And as of today, there have been no projects identified that communities are pursuing through a Protect grant. And as luck would have it, OCPC has identified a project that we're looking to undertake, and it's called the Social and Infrastructure Resiliency Plan. And this would be for the communities of Duxbury, Kingston, Plymouth, and Pembroke. And next slide. And the scope would actually be a plan to undertake a coastal assessment of community profiles, infrastructure and transportation inventories. And what we would do is take a deep dive into the MVP plans, the hazard mitigation plans, look at coastal flooding modeling, and the like. Obviously include hazard data analysis through the HAZIS program, and also have a robust public participation program, work with the communities. So this was our proposal to include in the MassDOT Resiliency Improvement Plan. And this would be in partnership with the 4 communities as a concept. And this would be carried out by our comprehensive planning department.
Great. Thanks, Charlie. All right, so I think with that, we do want to vote, right, Charlie, for that to be included?
Yes, please.
Okay, great. So are there any questions on any of this before we ask for a vote for the project Charlie described to be amended into the statewide RIP?
So moved.
All right, thank you, Valerie. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, thank you both. Go ahead and call the roll.
Rick George of Avon. I've been working.
Go ahead.
I've been working with the city of Brockton on the DW Field Park. There is a funding committee for that park. It's an 800-acre park with roads and no stormwater infrastructure. There has been some consideration on the DW Field funding committee about the Protect grant, but it hasn't solidified yet. But there has been some interest in whether it adding stormwater mitigation and road improvements to the park would fit within the Protect scope or priorities.
And Rich, Paul Omano from our office sits on that committee as well. So I know that he brought, I think, that information, but thank you.
And thank you for that. If the town, our city rather does go forward with it, feel free to let us know, and we're happy to, look into letter support or, provide any support we can at the state level as well. Any other questions? All right, I know we have a motion and second on the table, so go ahead and call the roll, Charlie.
Derek Cravette,
Yes.
Sean Handy,
Yes.
John Messia,
Yes.
Val Massard,
Yes.
Lee Hartman,
Yes.
Dan Salvucci,
Yes.
Mike Lambert,
Yes.
and Becky Coletta.
I'm gonna say yes and add, it was nice to see Pembroke on the list, even though I'm here on behalf of Old County Planning Council. I'm a Pembroke delegate. And I see that Bill Chenard, our town manager, is on the call as well. So glad to see the work. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Great. All right, thanks everyone. Move on to the next item, which is administrative matters and other business. Charlie?
Sure, we have a couple updates for the attendees today. The first is registration is still open for the 2025 MassDOT Innovation Conference, and it's being held May 6th and 7th at the DCU Center in Worcester. Last time I checked it, there are probably about 900 registrants so far, so
wow,
it's filling up fast. Next slide. So as you heard from Derek earlier, there's a Protect NOFO out for potential applications, and the deadline is in February, and it's February 24th. There's hyperlinks in the staff report. And another NOFO that's out right now is the RAISE grant, and that submission deadline is the end of this month. So next slide. And just a friendly reminder, our friends and colleagues at the Federal Funds Infrastructure Office, which is an office established by the Healy administration to provide a platform for technical assistance to communities and entities applying for discretionary grants to help to make Massachusetts competitive. They have a monthly meeting, and this next meeting is January 28th at 2 o'clock. And there's a registration link in the staff report. Next slide. And here's a series of dates that we ask folks to hold for upcoming meetings of the Old Colony MPO. So this is February through June. And as you all know, the MPO is developing their 3C certification documents. In particular, that's the Transportation Improvement Program and the Unified Planning Work Program. So your input is critical as the MPO is considering potential projects for inclusion in the Transportation Improvement Program. I'll just bookmark some items here. At their March meeting, there will be a discussion of scenarios and potential adoption of a preferred set of projects. April, there'll be a draft release of the Transportation Improvement Program to a public review and comment period. And our hope at the April meeting as well will be a release of the Unified Planning Work Program to a public review and comment period. And then May, hear public comments and consider endorsement of both documents. But that's what we have for updates. Open it back up to the chair to see if there are any other updates.
Thank you, Charlotte. No other updates on our end, but any other updates from MPO members? If not, we can move on to adjournment. Do you usually do a roll call vote for adjournment, Charlie?
No, it's more of just like all in favor. Say
okay.
Aye.
I'll ask for a motion and second to adjourn then.
Motion, Dan.
Second.
Okay. All right, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Any abstentions? All right, without objection, we're adjourned. So stay warm, everyone. And we'll
Aye.
see you
Thank
next
you.
month.
Great.